Hey guys, we have a phenomenal guest here on the line. We have mom of 3 daughters, wife, entrepreneur, a list longer than mine. Hey guys, we have Heidi Gruss, Gruss?
Yeah, Gruss.
Gruss on the line here, guys. Welcome to the podcast.
So I'm gonna tell you a little story, right?
Yeah.
And so you put this together however it works for you for the recording. But I was speaking with one of my girlfriends today. She's an entrepreneur. That's how we met, and now we're friends, right?
Yep.
And we were talking about like how we convey what we're doing so that our clients can absorb that material, so it's something tangible and they can then implement.
Yep.
And I said to her, for me, if someone has been very successful in their career or in business, I am leveraging what they know in that environment and then applying it to wherever the trouble is. So if it's home life, it's relationships, if it's, whatever. So the morning meeting, like we all know in corporate world, like the morning meeting is like the critical time of day. If you're late for work and you miss that morning meeting, like your manager is like, pissed, right? Yeah. And it's so critical because that's where you get the priorities, the goals, it's everyone's home base, basically. It's, and then you can all go and do your work and realize how your individual tasks contribute to the overall mission for the day. Well, so many people are familiar with the morning meeting. It's hysterical to me. And so I will tell clients, how about you have a morning meeting at home? Like you and your spouse, you and your partner, like, and you can have it at night if nighttime works better for you, but it's the concept, because then, you've got this 20-minute period of time where you've got each other's undivided attention to get through all the important logistics, right? Because so often that's where the miscommunications happen, that triggers the stress, that triggers the emotional block, to start the next, life event that's going to get in the way from you moving forward, right? It's also a great natural build-in time for that unresolved conversation from the night before, where you have to kind of circle back and address, the elephant in the room, right? It's like you use that time. So when you take things that are already working for people and you sort of translate them in the new environment, it makes the light bulbs just go off, where it's seamless. So,
which is awesome, because you get people like me who's go, and it's almost, and I'm gonna use the term, it's when I'm on Zoom calls and all that, the phone's silent. It's put away. Mine's actually on my bed right now. Where for that 20 minutes, you have those old school rules of like, hey, put your mic on mute, and actually what happens is all your distractions go away.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about, because of Zoom calls with all entrepreneurial groups, when you're at networking events or whatever it is, your phone's not on. Like when you're present of that situation. Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed, even especially and I'm coming from a remarried family, so like I'm not going on number 2 right now, but like my parents are on number 2, and what it is all of a sudden they hit, when that growth stops, they hit this like 30 years together, and they're like, oh, we've been together for 30 years, and you see one on one couch, you see another one on another couch, and they're completely on whole separate pages.
Yeah.
And they don't take initiative to have that morning meeting because it takes too much time. I don't want to use the excuse, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and they've just fallen into a routine that's comfortable. And so it's like, why would we start doing that now, 30 years later? Just flip the coin though for me for a second, because why not start now? Yeah. Right? Just flip the coin. I must say flip the coin a gazillion times a day,
No, and I'm sitting there laughing because I grew up, my entrepreneurial journey started with Robert Kiyosaki, and I see a repeated pattern through your stuff where you're like, leverage. I'm like, yes, she gets it.
Yeah. And that's how we keep things simple. And when things are simple, then we can stay in motion, and motion is where we want to be. We don't want this start, stop, this kind of jerky back and forth. That's exhausting. When we can just stay in motion, we might have to slow the pace down every once in a while, but we're still in motion. You know, and then there's other times where you know, that hustle, I'm like, you know, I hate that word, right? But where the hustle feels good because you're just in that flow. And so you want to ride that out, but it's not to the point where it's going to end up in a crash and burn scenario.
The thing that I was going to ask, the thing I was going to ask you about is, I think as entrepreneurs, we want to grab momentum so much. And when we have it, we don't want to let go. But what it is, there's a gray area where you all of a sudden you get put into that crash and burn, and you don't even know about it because you're still trying to ride that momentum out. Do you have that, or do you see a lot of people have that?
I see a ton of people that have that. I talk about this 4-week cycle that most people find themselves in, and I've been there a million times, right? Yep. And it starts with, like, you decide, you make the decision that you're going to go after this thing, right? So for you, it's you're going to run this marathon, right? And so you make the plan, you take all the necessary preparations, and you're ready to start this training on Monday, right? And so without, you know, fail at all, the first week is like every T is crossed, every I is dotted. You are enthusiastic, you are motivated. Nobody has to tell you to do anything. And at the end of the week, you feel on top of the world. You're like, it couldn't have gone any better. And that energy you ride into week 2. At the beginning of the week, you're feeling really good, but right around day 4 or 5, the newness is kind of worn off a little bit, right? And you're smart and you're savvy, and you know, you can take a couple of shortcuts without really sacrificing any of the outcome. And so you do, and you think nothing of it. And nobody's ever really going to know either, except that shortcut starts the mental shortcut up here. So that week 3, that's notoriously when life happens, you know, like the car breaks down, or you get the stomach bug ripping through the house, or just something unexpected that can easily be the reason why you can't follow through in the same way you did on week 1, right? So much so that at the end of week 3, you're so disappointed in your lack of progress, you don't even show up for week 4. You just plan to restart again. And that is the most exhausting cycle, because if you repeat that 12 months out of the year, you're missing, you know, about 16 weeks worth of momentum. If you had just week 3 said, you know what, we're going to just keep going. It doesn't really matter. We've already gained, you know, whatever momentum from week 1 and week 2, week 3, bump in the road. We're going to keep going here. You would have so much more in the end than trying to plan a whole new restart so that you can do it all perfectly and feel stellar about it.
Yeah, and I'm laughing because I actually did that this morning running. So instead of 8.5 miles, I ran 7.9. I'm like, we'll take this new way. And all of a sudden you're going, I'm like, oh crap, I just did that.
But we all do it. And it's like, listen, I work out every day, right?
Yep.
But I hate it. It's just not my thing.
Yep.
But I always feel good afterwards. It's like, I never regret doing it. But if I don't do it, I completely regret that. It's like, you know what, Heidi, you could have done 20 minutes. Like, come on, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But it's that when we start negotiating with ourselves in our minds, like, and I used to do this all the time with my workouts. The alarm would go off. I'd be like, oh, I've got a break in the day later. Like, I could totally get a run in then, or I could, you know, whatever, right? Knowing full well that if I don't do it in the morning, it's like, there's a high chance it's not happening.
No, the thing that I was going to say is, it's actually one of my questions here is I want to say is that cycle that we're fighting. So like take cut corners and all that stuff. What I've learned here in the last 6 months is I want to call it imposter syndrome, but like that technique to do that 12 weeks or 4-week cycle and then the 16 weeks and all that stuff is the momentum. What I notice is when my mind starts creeping into imposter syndrome, my brain's going, hey, this is uncomfortable. I shouldn't be here. And then my brain goes back to, it's like, you're a recovered addict. You went through this, you're meant to be here. Yeah. And I'm like, all that training that you're skipping for the 16 weeks of being off actually goes against, like, it actually counter or fights the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like asking yourself, right, whatever the circumstance is that you're facing that triggers that imposter syndrome, right? It's like, okay, so I don't know, some big spelling error or some, mass marketing thing went out, and, you're not happy with it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, okay. And so, can you still be that outstanding coach? Can you still be that outstanding entrepreneur, even though, some marketing material went out that was, that you're embarrassed by? It's like, can you be a successful coach and be embarrassed? Right?
Absolutely.
Yes, both are true, right? Or do you think that any of the successful entrepreneurs you see out there have never been embarrassed before? It's like, no, it's a human emotion. We've all been there. Like, just keep moving forward. Yeah.
And that's where, and lately I've been stuck on Ed Millett for some odd reason. And he keeps talking about, power one more. Yeah, do you have it?
I'm reading the book, and if you can listen to Lewis Howe's interview, Ed Millett, it was such a fantastic interview. It was great.
So the funny thing is, I'm part of a couple different networking or entrepreneurial groups, and actually the one I'm part of is his coach is actually Ed. So like, he's been coaching with Ed for like the last 4 years, and I have the book. It's literally on my bed. But yeah, all the guys I know in my circle are part of that Arte group, which him and Andy run. Uh-huh. And I'm going to go on a little side note here with this, but both of those guys are completely different. So like, him and Andy are completely opposite spectrums, which is awesome because it makes a phenomenal group. What I've learned is when I listen to someone that's 100% wide open, 100 miles an hour all the time, I tend to mold and develop into them. So what happens is, even though you're seeing me face to face, in my mind, you're hearing Andy. So I'm like, okay, time out. Let me back up here. And what it is what I notice is when I go to Ed, for some odd reason, so like, I grew up with alcoholic dad. I did have alcoholic issues and addiction issues in the past, imposter syndrome, feeling like you're not, like, just going through the whole allotment of what Ed goes through. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute, here's a brother just like me. Yeah. And all of a sudden it just clicked. I'm like, even though he's a lot more calm, I don't think it's a physical calmness of him. I think he had to tone himself back to just relate to everyone, because you could just see that lion or animal or whatever in him that wants to get turned on, but he's so disciplined so where you can turn it off and just, okay, hey, let's just have a conversation, versus boom, go 100 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that, like, my brain is just stuck to him, because I'm like, the more he digs into the book, and I have one more to go before I get to his book, I'm like, this is such relatable, because he gets opened up. And I don't know if he grew up blue collar or not. I don't know his whole backstory. I'll find out pretty soon here, but it's just a matter of coming home, knowing when, like for my case, stepdad would drop something in a room, and knowing that he's coming home drunk or whatever. And I'm like, wow. And then it just sinks you right into that environment of going, I know exactly what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But what's fascinating to me is what you're describing is you've got this vision of really who it is you want to embody, right? And it's not that you want to emulate, it's that you want to embody these qualities that you're realizing have helped Ed and Andy, achieve this success. And that is one of the things I ask my clients to do when they have a hard time envisioning themselves, in any sort of growth phase, right? It's really hard for them to see beyond where they are because of a limiting belief, or, the family belief system they grew up in, or things. It's like, okay, well, I want you to think of who's someone out there that you really admire, who's doing great things, not necessarily things you want to achieve, but they're just doing great things. And I want you to think, what is it about that person that you really love? Like when they talk to you, how do you feel in their presence? When they walk into a room, like what is the energy that they put out to the rest of the room? Like I want you to pull their state of being. That really is what is attracting you to them. And that becomes your vision, because once you find yourself in a situation where you're starting to do that mental negotiating, it's like, well, what would Andy do right here?
He would just
How would
blow
Andy
through the wall. He would just plow through the wall. Yeah.
But then that's your answer,
Yep.
when it's like, I don't feel like doing this little bit. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, what would Andy do? Right?
I will tell you exactly what he would do. And it's my podcast. I could say it, but it's like, quit being a little bitch and go through the wall. Word for word of what would come out of his mouth. And I know you got me on speaker, but that's how you would say it.
Yeah.
Like do 75 hard, quit being a little whiny girl, and not saying it that way, but I'm just saying it in Andy's voice.
Yeah.
Say, man up and go.
Right. So then that becomes your guide, right?
Yep.
Because a lot of times when you say to someone, you've got to have a CEO mindset, or you've got to be the leader of your life, that is too massive. That's like the big macro view. It's like, okay, but now let's really identify, who do you know that sort of fits that mold, right? And then I want you to say to yourself, okay, how would this person handle the circumstance that you're either avoiding or you're numbing from or you're procrastinating on, right? Because that's when we really start to see our own behavior patterns, and how, like you mentioned, it's might be fear-based, right? You're stepping into like new territory or out of your comfort zone, and that triggers that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was and at the beginning you were talking about this too, where it's like every level and all these guys say this exact process. If it's either my friends, Andy, Ed, I mean, we can go through the whole list, Lewis and all those guys, where each level will have a set of friends where you're going to either gain some, you're going to lose some. And then there's a gray area where, and this is what I'm learning how to do the last year or two, is love yourself, because in that gray area, people are going to come and go. And the ones that are going to come a little bit later versus the ones that go. So you're going to have a little quiet time in between when you're trying to go, I don't want to say in the gray area, but that process of letting people go into the next tier of people that are going into the level of life, it's going to be quiet for a little bit.
And then how can you use that solitude, that quiet time? Because that's where the magic happens. See, we can't think and feel at the same time. And we are genius people, right? All of my clients come to me with a wealth of knowledge. It would be insulting for me to tell them things to do at this point, because they've read all the books. They've done all the courses. They listen to the podcasts, right?
Yep.
At this point, it is the how. And that is connected to our feelings. The majority of blocks that people identify, it's not based off of not understanding something. They'll say rationally, it makes complete sense. Intellectually, I get it. Logically, absolutely. When I move from my head down to here, I call this the heart, but it's the emotional part of us. All of a sudden, it doesn't feel so secure. I'm not speaking with as much conviction. And that's where you have to go. And you need the quiet, you need the solitude to really sit and get close to this.
So
that's the magic. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing I'm going in my mind, and you're going completely into that, is the solitude, the quieting, I don't want to say the goal setting. It's almost like when you become this quiet area, you have to start visualizing to see yourself in there, to kind of push yourself into the next level. Because what I've noticed is when we start slipping a little bit, and I use it in the town I'm in, we have a commercial space that's up for rent down the road. And I'm like, hey, I would love to have a place like that. Okay, cool. Take a picture, look at it. And when you're down in the rut, it's like, okay, I'm going to own, either rent it, own it, whatever it is. I want that space.
Mhm.
And then it's like, hey, this day is going crappy, whatever. And then you just stop. It's like, wait, no, I need to rent that space.
Flip the coin. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one day. It's 1 hour, right? It doesn't have to be the whole day. It's so funny. Like, I really feel like I was called to do this work because, I mean, even back in high school, right? I can remember me and two really close friends of mine, it would be like when life was, just you're down in the ruts, it's like one thing after another. We would remind each other, it's like, well, you're due for a good. You're due for a good. It's like it can't keep going this way. It's going to turn. Just move on. You're due for a good. And so you then, by saying that aloud, it's like you're just opening it up, like, bring the good to me. You're calling it into yourself. And your comment about, as you're on this growth path in life, and I never heard you say anything about like you're better than people in your life, as you're growing, right? But we just grow in and out of relationships, and one thing that I try to even remind myself and my clients too, right, is we have to keep releasing in order to keep receiving. It's part of the process. We can't, imagine if every task it took to run your business, you did yourself, right? There's no way you could up level because you have to offload to be able to create space, time, energy, resources to then do the next set of tasks or challenges ahead of you. So releasing is what allows you to keep receiving. Really powerful message.
Yeah. That's the number one thing I think is what in my mind just going to me, that's like one of the few things of why people get stuck. Because they're so used to, and I'm in a different town I grew up in, but like the resiliency of everything in my whole past up to this point of going, okay, next. Not the check of goal setting. Okay, this is done. It's okay, life hit me. All right, what's next? Life hit me. What's next? Get back up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people and I'm in upper Midwest, but what it is they've been around the same people growing up. They go to the same places. They love the town they're in, which is great. They go to the same restaurants, and all of a sudden you have the same. You start piling on the same. You never have a chance to break into your creativity because you never go to like overseas or something just to break that cycle. Mm. And the thing that I'm going at is I think that's what people fear of, because what is this person going to think? What is that person think? And I'm past the point where I have my moments. I just don't care anymore because it's family, it's friends, whatever, but I have a bigger goals and dreams to take care of. Like I've been dropped vision to run Battle Warrior Brands, which is a fitness-based fitness-based company to help people break free from their perceptions growing up. And something that big, you can't have people say, hey, what about this? What about that? Or, hey, don't do that. Or, I've had so many people complain saying, hey, why did you move to this town? It's kind of a junk town. And I'm like, no. Like I came down here for a specific reason. People need help because that's why you're calling it a junk town, which means I need to help them break free of why we have this negative perception in this town. And what's the big deal if I build a big business in this town? Mm-hmm. And to me, it's almost like there's a limiting factor of why people don't want to leave that group because of that reason.
Well, we all crave belonging. It's a human need, right? We all want to know that we belong. Here's the thing though. We have to feel a sense of belonging within our own body first. This is where for me, it always comes back to mindset, because when you have a strong mindset, you have a level of self-awareness and self-connection, right? You're able to self-validate, you're able to self-identify what you need, what you desire, right? You need to be in tune with self. Once you have that level of belonging, the external belonging is secondary. Right now, what I see is the external belonging is primary at the cost of the self belonging, right? It's like I will jeopardize, I will sacrifice what's really important to me in order to keep my belonging or connection to these people, right? And what I want is I want to turn my clients inward to say, I want you to know what makes you tick, what is important to you, what makes you thrive, what is so important, what is a non-negotiable, what are the limits and boundaries you need in your life to take care of you first. And when you're so clear on that, then it's really easy to get the reps in of doing that self-care work, really, right? Consistently every day. That builds confidence, that builds competence. And so then when you are distracted by something in the external that compromises or has the threat of compromising something important to self, you're strong enough to be able to communicate that boundary or limit or respectfully decline, you know?
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it takes the mindset development to get there.
And I think what it is when the people, and I don't know if you've seen a pattern of this, but like the ones that are so resilient and they're strong went through so much in their past to where they're like, hey, I don't like, and I don't want to use the term look back at your past. I look back at my past as growth of saying, okay, this is the reason why I'm doing it now. Not, you know, there deep down, there's a thing. And I think everyone's got this wired where you want to prove some people wrong. I think we're naturally wired that way. But when you look at a whole list of stuff of people be like, oh, this occurred, like at, you know, like my dad, you know, going like this because of that, it caused me to be, you know, my self-image be very little, blah, blah, blah. And we could go through a whole list of everything and what he talks about. We look at it, someone like me, you, Ed, all them, look at that chunk and say, this is the reason why I'm growing. This is the reason why I want to do better. This is the reason why I want to give back. And this is the reason why I want to do something different in my life. Do you notice people that, I don't want to say the average because I don't want to split classes, but do you notice that when people start removing themselves from that and look at it and reversing it is where the growth happens?
I mean, have I seen that? Yes. Do I think it's down to a science that's how it has to happen? Not necessarily. I think it's really about, you know, so I'm talking long-term sustainable change. That's to me is transformation, right? It's not the Band-Aid quick fix thing that's going to get us through the situation in front of us, right? So, first of all, sometimes it's starting off on borrowed belief. Right. So when you were talking about imposter syndrome, I thought maybe we were going to go down kind of that direction of, you know, I don't really believe in myself, but can I still do the action anyway? Right. So even if do you have to believe in yourself in order to get the thing done that needs to get done to keep you on that growth path? Right. The answer is no, you don't have to believe in yourself. You just have to do it anyway.
Yep.
And to be working with a coach or a mentor or, you know, a therapist even, right? Someone who is providing that unconditional support and reinforcing, I believe that you can do this, right? You may have to leverage that other person's belief in you until you build that confidence within yourself, until you know, we have to do in order to show ourselves what we're capable of. We can't just read the book or learn how to do something. We have to demonstrate that we can actually do it. So there's this spectrum of risk taking, right? But by taking really small, low consequential risks, builds confidence. It builds competency.
And that's where I was going to say, and we're going to end it here quick, just because I'm like, there's so much value in the 20 minutes that we're talking that I'm like, I'm not going to stretch this out just because it's so action packed. that's where, and I'm going to reverse this and go back to where you were talking about breaking it down simple. People look at it as a big picture of, oh my God, look what they accomplished. We look at it as stripping it back down of going, okay, today I woke up, I did a run. Today I woke up, I did yoga. Today I took care of myself first, whatever. And then the combinations, or is what Ed or the boys would say, is stacking the wins up to that big mountain. And people are like, oh my God, look at the mountain. I can't have that. Just start today, guys. Like literally start today. And like you were saying, this hour, like do whatever you need to do this hour and build from there. And the simplicity of, I don't use the term success because it's not that, the simplicity of continuous growth.
Yeah. Just break it down and do it consistently. I mean, seriously, if you can just commit to doing something for 5 minutes every day, it's really just getting in the practice of doing the thing. It's not the amount of time. But if you commit to yourself, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. It's such a small amount of time that there's really no reason. There's no, excuse to use. It's like, just put in 5 minutes and you're done. You can check it off the to-do list, right? But getting in the practice of doing it then shows you how little bits add up over time.
Exactly. So where can all my listeners come and find you? We're going to, like I said, we're going to wrap this up just because we have a 20-minute action-packed podcast here, guys. So I'm not going to stretch this out and make it nice. So where can everyone reach you?
Yeah, so people can find me on all of the social media handles just under my name, Heidi Gruss. It rhymes with Seuss, but it's spelled differently. It's Gruss. Same with my website, HeidiGruss.com. You can go to /gifts, and there are a lot of resources available. And there is one freebie that's out there right now. It's a jam-packed 10-minute video on how to circumvent burnout using simple strategies that are easily able to be implemented into your day. So your listeners should absolutely take advantage of that resource.
Awesome. Thank you very much for this podcast here, guys. Go visit our website and download the 10-minute video, guys, today. Thank you.
Thanks.